Breaking news. A federal class action lawsuit has been filed against Joseph Biden, Kamala Harris, Pfizer, Moderna, and even FEMA. This groundbreaking lawsuit demands an end to COVID-19 vaccines, chemtrails, and 5G tech. In this lawsuit, the plaintiffs are seeking an order requiring the defendants to immediately prohibit the distribution, promotion, access, and administration of COVID-19 vaccines, mRNA nanoparticles, and all mRNA products in the United States, prohibit releasing poisonous heavy metals, chemicals, and other dangerous ingredients into the sky throughout the United States, prohibit releasing deadly mosquitoes, and prohibit 5G radio frequency from being released. In addition to this, the lawsuit also seeks to stop foreign funding and illegal immigrants. Now, this isn't the first lawsuit concerning Pfizer and its vaccine program. Earlier this year, Kansas accused Pfizer of misleading the public about COVID vaccines in a lawsuit. The state accused the company of misleading the public about the risks and the effectiveness of its vaccine. And only a few days ago, the FDA asked a Texas court to shut down the COVID-19 vaccine records lawsuit. This particular lawsuit was filed by the Public Health and Medical Professionals for Transparency, whose members include professors and scientists from Yale, Harvard, UCLA, and Brown. The group has posted thousands of records on its website. The lawsuit claimed that the medical and scientific community and the public have a substantial interest in reviewing the data and information underlying the FDA's approval of the Pfizer vaccine. So basically, the group is asking the FDA to show just why it chose Pfizer's vaccine to combat the pandemic. And now the FDA says it simply cannot keep producing the paperwork because it already has burnt through $3.5 million to present 1 million documents. Now, in addition to going up against Pfizer, this latest lawsuit also wants an end to all the chemtrails that we're seeing every day all over the US. And while this might be a step in the right direction, it might come too late for places like New Mexico, where rain and severe flooding are absolutely destroying towns without any mercy. And the town of Roswell is facing the worst of this storm.
No, we're actually floating. I'm sorry I told you to turn right. You should know better than to listen to me. I literally told you not to listen to me.
As you can see, the entire town is underwater, and since this was a flash flood, people didn't even get a chance to evacuate. And while the president and his administration seem to be busy with election campaigns, one woman posted this absolutely heartbreaking message on Twitter. "I have lost everything I own. Flooding in Roswell, New Mexico. I never would have imagined." And that's the thing. I mean, how could you possibly imagine that some rain can end up destroying everything you have in your life? But this wasn't just another autumn storm. They recorded 14.7 centimeters of rainfall in Roswell in a single day, breaking a 123-year-old record set way back in 1901. Now, if you ask any mainstream analyst, they'll just say that this was just another freak natural disaster. But let me ask you, what is the probability of a country facing not one, not two, but 3 once-in-a-lifetime weather events in the span of only a month? When you think about it like that, it doesn't seem like a coincidence now, does it? Now, it turns out strange things are happening all over the world, as this guy points out perfectly in this video.
What in the end of the world is happening right now? Why is everywhere flooding? And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. So we have Roswell, New Mexico completely flooding. Quite literally for no reason, it appears the worst flood since, 1901? But again, it's everywhere. The same exact time it's flooding in Canada. That's odd how all these places, Paris is flooding as well? All these places randomly flood at the same time out of nowhere. The worst stuff in 100 years. I believe this right here was in Canada. Wow. So like, is there anyone who can explain this? Don't forget about Italy happening almost at the same exact time, and multiple other countries, and at the same exact time, all of Cuba has went dark. This photo was taken Friday night in Cuba. Again, completely 100% dark. So like, can anyone explain where all these floods and all these crazy events are coming from? And completely unrelated, check out these cool clouds. You don't see that every day, huh?
Interestingly, the story about Cuba facing multi-day blackouts is also pretty bizarre and ominous. Some people believe it's a warning that pretty soon something similar might be happening in the US as well.
So Cuba is completely out of power, like the entire island. 10 million people without power. Now, I'm not one to jump to conclusions, but usually before something big happens in America, it's like they try to do like a little trial run in a smaller country. They do it with the monetary system. They do it with different military exercises and different things all throughout history. You can look them up. My curiosity, I guess, should be a better way to say it. Like maybe this is a run through to see how the whole country of Cuba is going to act for a couple of weeks without power as preparation to see how we would react. I don't know. Maybe not. Still pretty crazy. 10 million people without power. The entire island of Cuba. And they're blaming the United States. So we'll see.
Now in Cuba, people protested against these total blackouts by staging mass protests, and I think we might need to follow their lead the moment the lights go out. Now, while we're discussing strange storms and events, I would love to once again draw your attention back to North Carolina and the victims of Hurricane Helene, because it's pretty clear at this point that the mainstream media has intentionally stopped talking about it. Go out to the families of all these missing people, and we do hope that you find your loved ones very soon. And while our news channels might have forgotten, this channel and its community certainly won't. We will keep showing the world exactly what's going on in these small towns. For instance, do you know that the governor of North Carolina is telling people to just sell their land instead of rebuilding?
In southeastern North Carolina, 1,000 year. We know that that's not true anymore. We know that these events are going to become more and more intense. So we've spent a lot of time being smart about the way we approach rebuilding. We go into communities, we work with them, we have plans for local governments. You know, in some areas, you just shouldn't build back. Mm-hmm. And we've been able to convince certain communities and people that buyouts are better, and you create green space that soaks up flood water that comes and protects surrounding areas. When you do build back, you have to invest more in order for property to be more resilient.
While the governor is happily telling folks to accept buyouts, I would like everyone to know who exactly is going to inspect your property and calculate your losses on FEMA's behalf. According to the latest documents I discovered, the first company FEMA chose for these house inspections is none other than Vanguard Inspection Services. And funnily enough, the other company chosen by FEMA is WSP, whose biggest shareholder also happens to be Vanguard. Let's take a look at what I posted. FEMA contracts out its hurricane home inspection services to BlackRock. FEMA will be conducting free home inspections. The companies performing the North Carolina Hurricane Helene victims' home inspections, as listed on the FEMA website, are owned by Vanguard and BlackRock. The same company that owns the majority of the lithium mining in the area will be the same ones inspecting the victims' properties they want to take. On the FEMA website, there's a page that discloses the recipients of certain federal FEMA contracts and what services those contractors provide. If you search for the private companies with contracts for the Housing Inspection Services function, you'll see two contracts. One to WSP USA Services Inc., and the other to Vanguard Inspection Services. WSP is an environmental consulting firm based out of Canada, with BlackRock and Vanguard Group being major investors. Vanguard Inspection Services has all the markers of a front company and looks as though VIS exists solely to do business with FEMA. After North Carolinians and Floridians apply for FEMA assistance following Hurricane Helene, a home inspection may be necessary to help determine whether the home is safe, sanitary, and livable. First of all, we need to consider the implications of home inspectors, employed in part by BlackRock and Vanguard Investments, surveying the damage and assessing the value of hurricane-stricken North Carolina, especially because of the vast lithium deposits in the ground beneath and around these private properties. The demand for lithium is going to explode over the next few years. The global lithium market is projected to reach a value of $230.4 billion by 2031. This is a more than 500% increase in less than a decade. Are company agents essentially working on behalf of BlackRock and Vanguard going to be impartial parties as they value and assess the properties destroyed by Hurricane Helene? Are they going to deem these residences livable and safe if their bosses want what's buried beneath the homes? Is there an incentive for these contracted home inspectors to screw the homeowners out of their own property? Will these homes be condemned so the BlackRock and Vanguard bosses can dole out paltry fair market value pennies and become even wealthier? If I didn't know any better, I'd reckon this is about to be one of the greatest wealth transfers in the history of the United States. They clearly aren't even hiding their plans anymore. I mean, I just showed you guys in a previous video how Duke Energy allegedly drowned entire communities during Helene. And surprisingly, this company is owned by Vanguard. And now we find out the people who caused all this damage are also responsible for assessing it. And who can forget about the fact that they are likely going to buy this land as well through the lithium mining companies. So right now it looks like we are at the mercy of the board members of Vanguard and BlackRock, and unless we do something about it, they are not going to stop. However, before you decide to sell your land, I would like you to hear what this guy has to say.
The Appalachian Mountain System has more than just lithium and quartz deposits. Do you know what else it's rich in? Gold. You know what that flooding did? It moved a lot of that gold down the mountain. So before you sell your properties, you might want to have somebody come in and take a sample of the soil on your property. Maybe that's why the government doesn't want civilians to come in and help out. They don't want citizens possibly moving all that pay dirt. I would definitely watch government agencies and what they're doing with the soil, which companies are involved, and where they're moving it to. Just saying. So again, if your property was destroyed by the flood, I would have somebody come in and survey my land, survey my soil.
So if you are in the mountains of North Carolina, it might be a very good idea to do a personal inspection before you sell your land. That's going to do it for today's video. Please make sure you're subscribed to this channel, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.